So let's go ahead and start that. I'm going to actually start with my cerulean blue way back here in the background. Now a lot of this background is going to end up darker than this, but I'll start with this lighter wash of this cerulean. And I have that in, and it looks nice the way it is. It's nice and light. I might mingle some cobalt blue in there as well. And I'm going to do that by starting with my cadmium yellow. And again, I'm just going to put swaths of color. But I'm going to continue to add color. Now it's a big fluid wash, but notice that I sort of put them in with the side of the brush. Got some kind of rough brush marks in there. With clear water, I'm just going to blend this violet color down into this area. Actually, I'm going to bring it across the pathway here. Let's get some more of our yellow on this side. Maybe some flowers sticking up out of here. Might mingle some of that violet right in here. Maybe in there as well. And I'm getting a layer of that color in there. It's going to be shady back in that doorway, but I'm going to start with that color really kind of everywhere. I'm starting with the yellow. That yellow is picking up other colors. Let's do it over here as well. Allow those two to mingle together, the yellow and the cobalt blue, to mingle together and create green on the paper. Over here, I think I need, first of all, some more yellow. And then cobalt blue, again, to get some darker greens, blue greens really. I'm going to do some of that work in here to try to start to show a little bit of individual, maybe leaves. So again, a real simple, broad application of these colors in an area that's supposed to be shadier, actually. And I'm getting some of that darker color that I just mixed with ultramarine blue and lemon yellow up in here, again, to sort of show greenery between individual blooms and flowers. And again, I'm using the side of the brush to try to get some rough edges that will show off my individual flowers. There's also branches of this tree. I'm going to try to keep that light, so I'm painting around those. Again, this represents the distant trees, forest back there, whatever other plants are back in there. Rough edges by using the side of the brush. I'm going to work right up to the edge of the shed there. This side of the tree. Again, painting around. I go back to my violet mixture that I made from the ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson, and I'd like it to be more blue violet than red violet, so I'm going to go back, pick up more, mingle it in, work over towards the tree that's right here. And again, I'm making these quick strokes. I'm using the side of my brush. And by making these strokes, I get the rough mark, and it leaves rough marks that look like, light sort of dappling through the flowers that are over here on the right-hand side. I'm going to add some darker value. This is still nice and wet, so as long as I'm careful and I get that color right back into these wet areas, I can darken it up, which I really want to do. Just by making marks like this, again, kind of using the side of the brush and getting similar marks to what we did here. Might add something to that later, but I'll start with that. And while I've got the raw sienna on my brush, I'll go in here to the inside of the doorway. Get some of what is also maybe some bounced light back in that part of the building. Cool shadow back in there, pretty dark. And really with the tip of my brush, I'm starting to make marks, these vertical quick strokes that look like, again, individual leaves or stems. It's darkening the whole area. These are individual marks really, but collectively they start to give us the impression of a much darker value in that area of the painting. So I've got both green and violet kind of mingled together in there. Some of these blossoms are darker and lighter, where some of them are catching a little bit more light, and some areas are a little bit darker. I'm going to try to get that in. So let's take that technique and let's go over here to this side of the painting and work on this area of the garden, which is also, we're kind of in the shade. We're looking at the shady side of it. It's catching light up in here, but it's really shady back here. And again, the same technique that we just used over here. But we're not going to stop there. We're going to go back to this darker green that we used on this side. Same thing. Same sort of stroke, the side of my brush. A little bit of that violet, less than over here. I don't want to be look quite as dark as that area, but I do want to get some darker spots in there to show, again, kind of the shady sides of these flowers. Use the side of my brush and get some rough marks in there so that we get a little more sense of differences between some of these individual flowers. Notice how the addition of these two darks actually starts to make this area look lighter than it did initially. Particularly at the corner, right here where the light changes from lit to shade. This darker area right here is really going to be important, projecting shade in this side of the garden. Some rough brush. It's not really dry brush, so I call it rough brush. I do want to shade it a little bit, so with my alizarin crimson again, I just get some areas that are a bit darker, and where especially right at the corner. And then I'm going to get some cast shadow up here. I'm not going to overdo it. Down here I've got this really dark cast shadow, and I'm not going to do that here, but I am going to try to get it in, darken it, cool it. You can see I'm working around these flowers that are in the foreground. Some of the thick violet as well, again, right in here. We don't want to do a lot, but a little of it right next to that yellow-orange will really set off the yellow-orange. Dark violet mixture that I used up there. And again, with the side of the brush, try to get a rough edge on it. And then blend that color back up into that wet area so that we know it's part of the tree. I think I'm going to make this an open doorway. Now that's way too dark for the painting. I got to turn it here. So with clear water, I just sort of lighten it. I do work along the edge of the doorway there. But I lighten it, I lift a little bit. And I'm going to put that up in here. Again, I need to turn this a little bit. Kind of get it dark up in that part of the window where there's cast shadow on it. Kind of smooth out some of those darks with clear water. Let it kind of mingle and overlap the cerulean blue. With raw sienna, I'm going to run right along the frame of the window just to show a little bit of shadow. This is cadmium yellow, really, really thick. And I'm just going to put some touches of it. Not a lot, but a few touches of it over in this area of the flower beds. Maybe over here as well, a little bit. They're just little sparkles, kind of, you think of it like that. And then with the rigger, and with some of these colors I've already got mixed, I'm going to give a little bit more indication of individual stems and leaves on the plants. It's easy to overdo this work, the fine work with the rigger. In fact, we often grab the rigger way before we should and start doing work in the painting. Just some indication of individual stems, leaves, a little bit of the dark purple over in here. And right there at the corner, I think I'd like to have a kind of rough transition. There we go. Maybe a little bit of that up in here. Cadmium yellow, but any cadmium color really, it's so thick and actually opaque that if you put it on, like for instance right in here, I can sort of brighten up that area a little bit since there are yellow flowers there. And I'm working kind of carefully with the tip of the brush around these yellows that I just put on. And I might bring it down a little bit further, as if we're seeing a little bit more of that trunk a little further down into the garden. Some of my alizarin crimson, I feel like I'm going to bring that down into here and break up this big group of flowers into some smaller. But this is all, I have to say, this is nitpicky stuff. The painting is really done. If you take a look at it on the screen, the painting is really done. It's, I think it's got the nice value range that I wanted. It certainly focuses right there with that nice bright light on that part of the garden, as well as the pathway right there. These little touches I'm doing now really are not necessary. I think the painting is done. And that's one of the things as you're painting, I often get the question is, how do you know when it's done? Well, when you take a look at it and you can't really figure out anything else that needs to be done, and you can't see where it seems like something's missing, then it's probably done.